Thank you, folks. Gives me great pleasure to introduce, first of all, the director of the film, Raphael Sbarge. Raphael, thank you so much for joining us. And someone who needs no introduction, Greg Laemmle. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for this beautiful film. I'll start off with a few questions, and then we'll hand you both over to the audience. I want to start with talking about, first of all, Raphael, where did this start for you? How did you come in to this 3 generations of amazing motion picture history?
Yeah, I grew up in New York, and my dad was, of many things, he was also a documentary filmmaker, and I love film, and I love this theater. I also, as I say at the beginning of the movie, if you want to screen a movie in Los Angeles, going to Laemmle Theaters is kind of the place to go. And I made a film, and I called the Laemmle Theaters, and essentially what I got was Greg Laemmle, which was sort of astounding to sort of get right to the man. And he was very clearly interested in helping. He was a very good businessman, but at the same time, really made it possible. And for me, it just, it opened those screenings. This moment between, the screen and the audience is sort of this special place. And no matter how many films you have on hard drives, it doesn't feel like a film until actually it meets an audience. And so there's this wall that you saw a lot of in this movie that inspired. I was knocked out by the Legacy story, and I approached Greg and said, "Has anyone ever done a doc about your family?" And he said, "Yes," and I think this was a word that he came to regret. But we did this. We started this process. No regrets. I'm being funny, but I essentially what happened was we were at a moment in time. We started something, and then obviously we went down this journey, which was unexpected. Once the sale happened, once some of these other things happened, I said, "Is it okay? Can we keep following you? Can we go through this process with you?" And he said yes, and really engaged in a way that was stunning, I think.
And it really, I'm sure took many twists and turns that you were not ready for. Nobody was ready for this pandemic, and kind of, the odds were against the industry, and then it came with another blow. But then it allowed us to really end on this reopening. Where have things gone since then? What are the updates?
Well, the updates are we're still open. 18 months in. One of the theater properties that we sold, they ended up, the lease back ended, and we had to cease operating. That's the Playhouse Theater in Pasadena. It was a, silver lining moment because it stayed a movie theater, but it's going to be operated by someone else. But at least, I take that as a good sign. But some of the other theaters will ultimately close. We're trying to take it day by day. I mean, it's been a difficult period during the post-pandemic period. We're dealing with a shortage of the number of films. We're dealing with several waves of COVID coming in and out that keep people away, and in terms of the changed media environment, the biggest problem we're having in Los Angeles is just getting films reviewed. And I think that's, a factor here in New York as well. Maybe not to the same degree, but, the daily papers are not covering film in the same way that you used to. And that makes a problem in informing people about what's out there and what's worth seeing.
I know I'm preaching to the choir here. All of you are in this room, but I'll say, tell your friends, bring them out, take them away. Netflix is great, but nothing can replace this experience. I'm being nice. I want to say Ira Deutschman is here with us tonight, a good friend of the program here, and he made a film called Searching for Mr. Rogoff about the founder of Cinema 5, which I think kind of goes hand in hand with this film as far as it being a story about a theater chain that's had a huge impact. And both films, I think, answer this next question, but what is the magic specifically of the Laemmle theaters that make it so unique? And I think the film answers it, but I'd love to hear it from you guys after exploring all of this. What makes people come to a Laemmle theater?
Well, at the end of the day, it's the movies we show. I think what gives people a relationship to Laemmle theaters is the consistency, and perhaps the trust that whether they like the film or don't like the film, that it's going to be something idiosyncratic, that it's going to be something that in many cases is the passion of the person that made the film, and perhaps it's it's everything. It's our employees. It's the realness of the people and the film. Actually, I want to give our employees a lot of credit, many of whom came back. But there were times when you need to, you have this real problem. Your concession salespeople are not upselling drinks or something like this. And I said, you got to be kidding me. I mean, I could, I'm happy that these people show up. I'm not going to, these are real people. They're here because they love film. I'm not going to get them to upsell concessions, and I don't want to. So that's, it's all part of it, I think.
Raphael,
The
you want to
realness.
add?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of filmmakers who talk to me. Obviously, some extraordinary filmmakers in this film. My understanding is that some of them don't talk ever, like Cameron Crowe. But the James Ivorys, the Ava DuVernays, the Alison Anders, many of them really speak to Laemmle being a sort of a point of inspiration. If it wasn't exactly Laemmle, then it was also a theater like Laemmle theaters, and this is sort of where I kind of go to where, this is a movie about a specific theater chain with this incredible history and legacy back to the origins of Hollywood, but it is also a story about theaters everywhere. One of the things that haunts me still is, perhaps you've heard of food deserts, right? That's where, essentially you've got neighborhoods with no supermarkets and no access to food, so people have to travel. There's a term that I discovered from one of the experts that I spoke to, movie theater deserts, which, I grew up on the Upper West Side. I remember how many movie theaters there were up here and that we don't have anymore. I miss them terribly, the Thalia, the New Yorker, on and on. But the fact is that these are, when they go, they're gone forever, right? So the opportunity here is essentially the hope, or perhaps the cause, that the reason why these filmmakers spoke to us is because they felt deeply, passionately about how much the theatrical experience really affected both the medium, affected the experience, and here we are now, technology has given us an opportunity to be completely alone. We order in, we have no contact, and if to talk to anyone, you can text them, and we're dealing with depression and anxiety off the charts, et cetera. I think we're social animals, and I think remembering that, obviously, again, I'm preaching to the choir, but I think these are sacred spaces, and I think that these filmmakers who spoke to me understood that their movies were made for 40, 60-foot screens. The reason why they are there is because they got moved to be a filmmaker in a movie theater. And this is where sort of the microcosm becomes the macrocosm. This is Greg Laemmle of the Laemmle Theaters, which is very substantial. At least, the more and more I knew, the more and more I was just sort of overwhelmed and impressed. But more than that, it also, Greg speaks to something that really matters, which is about really standing up for this theatrical experience and how important that is. And this, hopefully, it's not the movie I started with. It really wasn't. I really just thought, like, wow, this is a really cool story about a family, a Jewish family who really has really held their own through everything. And even pornography didn't take them off the rails, and they have really, they've really held the line. I thought it was an interesting sort of pivot of history. But that's what, again, hopefully we get to be reminded of. And again, I know this audience knows that.
And I think beyond, actually, there's obviously a cinematic story here, but it's beyond that. It also really tells a story of a family that anyone with a family can relate to. And I think especially in changing times, we know that family businesses can change. and that's something that I think makes it very relevant even more broadly. And I think you do a beautiful job. There's that ending scene there that's a really touching moment. But I mean, throughout, the family feels like they're a part of this, and I think we get into the family there. And I have to say, I mean, we're showing it here at the JCC, and we would have shown it either way, but beyond its basic elements, it actually it runs very Jewish. Well, you started it off, I believe, with a Shabbat meal, and there's references all over the place. I think you have the I don't roll on Shabbos in the background, and for multiple interviews there. Why was that important to include?
My family is here, so it makes me want to. My dad, who I spoke to, passed right before I started filming this, and my father's family, who I was very close to, came from Ukraine and came to New York and opened a schmata business in the Bronx and one in the garment district. It was a family business. My father's family was where I felt closest, and there was a warmth and a genuineness. A genuineness and an intelligence and a care for the things that mattered. While Greg's family is a world away, and as opposed to coming to New York, I think they went through Canada, but they came to Los Angeles, which it could have easily been any number of one of us, but they brought those European ideals of art and philosophy and music and all of those things, and again, are responsible for really bringing foreign film to Los Angeles. Why is that important? Well, because it was a transmission point for so much. They couldn't get to the Thalia, and there was a lot going on, and it was such a. But there was something about that reminded me of my family, and I guess where I connected to this family, and it was in the midst of all of this, remarkable, crazy Hollywood stuff. There's the spine of this was a family story, and hopefully then not just a sort of a, it's an American story. It's a multi-generational family business, and hopefully that would translate then across, just to Jewish families, but also any family. That's why I talk about the last family farm or the last bookstore. There are residences that we have and that we're seeing now over and over again.
Greg, do you want to?
Well, I mean, look, I use I would want to use the term survivor very carefully, because my family, by and large, was spared the worst of the Holocaust. But there was a sense of displacement, certainly, and I felt like Los Angeles somehow had been, a very welcoming environment for my family at a time, at a very difficult time. And so certainly for me, there's this debt that I felt to the city. And wanting to repay that, and wanting to maintain what the city wanted, and so that went into the sale process. It went into the consideration of who to sell to and how to sell, and would that be maintained, and ultimately at some level, probably influenced the desire not to sell, and continues to power. Even though I live in Seattle now, I'm still, Los Angeles is my home, and I'm always going to be very concerned about what that business brings to the city, because ultimately cities are the people and the institutions that define them, and that's why. And that's why I probably have a very anti-corporate attitude, because if every business is the same from one place to the next, how do you know where you are?
So I think one element that we haven't mentioned here yet is something, beyond the big screens, beyond the amazing sound systems, beyond the sometimes comfortable seats. I think what film really does, and this is where the Laemmle theaters are a little bit, and I see this in the film, are community centers. I think they bring the community together, and they bring people together. And I've been watching here for the last few months, after a year and however much being completely virtual. seeing these movies, sure, on the big screen and with the sound systems and this one too, I'm like, oh my God, this is there's no comparison. But what really gets me is when the audience laughs together, when the audience cries together, when people in our audience, make new friends, when they grab the hand of the person that's sitting next to them, and not in a creepy way. It's really, I think it's something that you've given to this community that is deep in your values and a big part of what we're grateful for. I'd love to open this to your questions, make the community a part of this. I will note before we get to our questions that the film opens at IFC January 18th. That's the plan, and it's really important that you tell everyone you know to go
Also
see
the New
it.
Plaza.
And also at New Plaza Cinemas as well, Upper West Side, so don't have to go down to the Village. We got a question up on top.
I think of myself as an advocate for theaters, and so I have a technical question for you, Greg, but I think it'll still be interesting for everybody else. I'd like to know, in your expert opinion, what are some solutions? It's great to tell people, yes, you should return to cinemas, but what are some ways that even our government or, other entities can, help the situation? Because now, cinemas are a dying breed, and we used to think of them as, oh yeah, these are, for-profit institutions, but really they're like cultural organizations. So do you have any ideas for how to sort of reform the situation to make it more sustainable?
Right. Well, so one thing that the government did do finally was because the early stimulus programs during the pandemic were designed for businesses that were operating, basically the PPP program, which provided payroll but not other expenses. Finally, at the in December of 2020, they passed the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant Program, which provided specific funds to venues that had been shuttered, movie theaters, music venues, and so on and so forth. So that has been a major boon for the industry, and has probably provided the opportunity for a lot of theaters to reopen and stay open. No, it doesn't continue, but it allows us to. It certainly has helped the capitalization for the company to provide a backstop for what are still reduced revenues. You're saving from the good years to the bad years. That's a Jewish reference, right?
Egypt, I think.
Yeah,
right?
I think. Okay,
Joseph.
somewhere in Genesis.
Joseph.
Yeah, there you go. That one. But look, it's been a help. And nationally, I was on a panel last week with someone from the National Association of Theater Owners. It's a different NATO. We've lost maybe 1,000 movie theaters that didn't reopen. And there's some very key ones, certainly, that have not reopened. But by and large, movie theaters have come back. Whether we're going to sustain or not, remains to be seen. Yes, at the end of the day, seeing more movies, talking about the movies that you see, and encouraging other people to go. Talking about the experience of feeling safe and healthy in a movie theater. Those are all things that people can do. The next year is probably still going to be a difficult year in terms of the number of films that are going to be in release, but we're hopeful that as the industry by and large starts moving away from pushing films towards the streaming platforms, because that's not working for them, that we're going to see more movies coming through movie theaters. And more movies does make a difference, because it's the variety of films that bring people back and back and back. And once the habit starts again, I'd like to believe that it's going to continue, because this is not something that you can recreate in your home. It's not about the access just to the film. It's the whole experience, and this is a very unique experience.
I'll also throw in there that a lot of art houses are nonprofits, and supporting those nonprofits and those kinds of nonprofits. This is where we'll give our end of year reminder to support the JCC in Manhattan, and it's a wonderful film program. It's really a way to keep cinema alive, and supporting these kinds of institutions will allow films to continue, whether they're filling up or not. We want to fill them up too. Other questions? We got one right down here.
Nope, it's on. Just talk. Ah, it works. So I own a family business, and I survived COVID. And Greg, let me tell you, when you were talking through the May of 2020, every day, boy, you were... This has been the most suspenseful movie I've seen in a long time, and it certainly pulled on my heartstrings. But I wanted to ask the director about his choice of background music. I have not experienced a documentary that has these chords, these melodic chords, without a tune to them specifically. And I found it very compelling and very beautiful, and made the whole experience very poetic. And if the people speaking were speaking with no background, it would have been a much drier film. So I just wanted to ask or comment that I thought it was very wonderful.
Yeah, I want to say our editor, Rick Pratt, is here as well, and has a huge part of this, making this all possible. Yeah. The choice of the two wonderful composers, Isabel Engman and Gerardo Garcia, and they really understood this. The balance always is being able to sort of find that where you feel but aren't told how to feel, right? So it's a delicate balance in the scoring of a movie, and you always know when it's too much, because you get like, you get ahead of it, right? So what we worked very hard to try and do is to kind of really sort of inform it and really live in it without trying to step over, and thank you for what you said. I will tell them I love the score. It really, even when I listen to it, I was I'd come out and come in, but I've seen it a couple times, but it still does tug at my heart as well. Thank you for that comment.
We have time for one more right here.
Can you tell us a little bit about your family's history as producers and Universal? And I gather there were some setbacks there, and did that affect how you felt when you started struggling?
So we're not directly descended from Carole, and Carl Laemmle Sr. brought his son, Carl Laemmle Jr., ultimately in to run the studio. This is after firing Irving Thalberg, which was not a good move, arguably because Thalberg would not date Carl's daughter. He ended up with Maura Scheer, so it certainly worked well. For a while, worked out for Thalberg. Essentially, Carl lost control of the studio and was forced out by Wall Street backers. And very shortly after, anybody named Laemmle was forced out. So that's when my grandfather left working for Universal. He was doing independent distribution in Europe. But at that point, we were getting, post 1936, and they were ready to get out. And that was sort of the end of it. In terms of, I didn't necessarily think about Carl's struggle with the business, but I did think about my grandfather a lot, going from 5 and 6 movie theaters in the late 40s to one movie theater, and his ability to survive and regrow after that experience. And I thought about that a lot during the pandemic. I thought about my father's experiences when Cineplex Odeon was expanding their circuit in the 80s, and they would basically go around to every art house operator around the country and say, we want to buy your circuit, and if you don't sell us your circuit, we're going to build theaters right on top of you and put you out of business. And, you know, my father basically said, no, and we're not selling. And as we were going through the sale process, I would, you know, what gave you the ability to say no? And actually, the answer was, you know, he said, you know, we were making money. And as long as we were making money, there was no reason to sell. And it was never about how much money we made. It was just as long as, you know, we could stay in business and keep the doors open, that's what we do. We run movie theaters. So as we were getting into late 2019 and, you know, the sale process was moving along, and all of a sudden, you know, we went from being in the red to being in the black. And then it was like, well, I don't have to sell now. So, yeah, you know, you have these family businesses, and you operate from a different premise than, you know, when you're a corporation and you are responsible to Wall Street. You're responsible to something else, and legacy and family history is a big part of that. So the one thing I took from Carole, well, I'll say the one thing that people don't know about Carole, or maybe people who saw the Carole Laemmle documentary know, is that after he lost control of the business, he still spent his time providing affidavits for probably 300 families from Germany to come to the United States. He provided so many affidavits that the State Department, you know, started questioning his ability to actually provide for the wherewithal for all these people. But you know, this idea that, you know, that there's you know, if you have the ability to do something to make a difference in someone's life, to save someone's life, you know, that's really responsible, and it's not just about your business. Your business provides you with the ability to impact the world above and beyond that, and something I hope that I can do.
A notable addendum on that, one of the people that he brought over was a director named Billy Wilder, arguably one of the greatest directors for actors. He won more Academy Awards for any...
William Wyler.
William Wyler, sorry. William Wyler, yes. William Wyler, who...
He might have brought Billy, too.
William, forgive me, but William Wyler, who won more Academy Awards for actors than any other director in films.
Another film that we screened here, the Carole Laemmle film. Where can people find out more? What should they be doing next?
Yeah. Well, you know, thank you for being here. This is our sort of premiere in New York, and it's a big emotional moment for me for many reasons. But you know, you are potentially our advocates. We're going to open on, as he said, on the 18th and in January, and then again on the 20th at New Plaza. You can find us on Facebook, only in theaters. There's, you know, newsletters and things that we send out. Basically, you know, please tell your friends. That's really the deal. This is an opportunity really to be reminded, hopefully, that going to the theater is important. We are literally voting with our feet. We're at a potentially at a delicate moment in terms of being able to sort of tilt the balance, because so many people have gotten out of the habit of going to theaters, and we have to sort of really encourage that again. That's not just live; that's live theater as well as also, you know, theater and movies. But this is an opportunity, hopefully, to continue to sort of spread the word about this. And you know, again, thank you for being here tonight.
I want to thank you both for being here tonight and for this beautiful film. I want to thank Film Collective and Jessica Rosner, who made the shidduch to make this all happen.
Rosner.
And thank you all for being here. Thank you. Come again. Happy New Year. Happy Hanukkah. And we hope to see you soon. Take care.